Hello, my name is dwaynemartingomez, and the social change movement I decided to research this past semester is the anti-sex trafficking movement. To begin with, the types of factors from those models of social change reading are both materialistic and idealistic. The materialistic aspect has to deal with the economic production the sex workers bring in to their sex traffickers, better known as their pimps. The victims exhaust their bodies and are dehumanized at the hands of greedy, violent, and malicious gangs or individuals. The victims are a source of income and generate the wealth. When it comes to being idealistic, the victims are viewed and used as capital. They believe that the more capital they kidnapped, the greater the investment. Elements from my chain process which prove that sex trafficking is materialistic is the fact that bodies are exchanged for monetary benefits. Sex traffickers provide of all ages, whether refugees or immigrants, which are most vulnerable, to people who are willing to pay for sex acts. Additionally, elements from a change process which prove that sex trafficking is idealistic is that those groups combating it are standing up for human rights. They are advocating on behalf of humans to not be dehumanized and seen as money, rather people. This is the logic behind the industry, that people can be exploited for their benefit. The general model of social change which describes my change process is cyclical. As soon as one victim is rescued, another victim or perhaps the same victim may be sucked back into the sex trafficking industry. One case may be solved in a city, while another may reopen in a nearby city, county, or country. These groups will then reorganize and fight for their rights through social media mobilization or assisting local law enforcement. Concrete elements within my change process, which prove sex trafficking is a cyclical general model of social change, are: a kidnapped person may work for a pimp until she is escaped or rescued. They may not seek proper care or is, excuse me, vulnerable when rescued, so they fall back on being trafficked. This reflects the efforts to combat this. For example, a campaign may hold a rally or a vigil once the public is aware, then they may actively search, and once found, they will celebrate. However, once another victim is noticed, the process will repeat itself. It is a repetitive, exhausting cycle. Now, I believe the functionalist perspective is the one that best fits my change process of combating sex trafficking. In accessing the definition of functionalism, the societies which are out of sync due to sex trafficking have inherent strains in their system as a result from inconsistent institutional practices. The corrupt system that is one that does not allow sex work and is one that is sometimes connected with sex traffickers for monetary compensation. The anti-sex trafficking process works towards dismantling the social strain of human being kidnapped and coerced into selling their bodies. Interesting enough, there was a bipartisan bill that was introduced by Senator Corker in 2015 to enact legislation to eliminate modern-day slavery and human trafficking around the globe. This came to included in the National Defense Authorization Act (NDAA), which passed in 2016. This type of legislation relates to the functionalist perspective by addressing to relieve the strains of lack of money and resources to combat this issue through funding and monitoring the processes. The theory about the social movements that best accounts for how anti-sex trafficking I am researching got started is the rational choice theory. As described in the readings, rational choice is when people join movements because they see social movements as a mechanism for collective problem solving, a way to get something done that can be accomplished via conventional societal channels, your everyday means. So, in 1927, the League of Nations changed the name of suppression of white slave traffic to just traffic in women and children. So that it eliminated discrimination. This also included both binaries when it came to gender. At the 1927 meeting, the League of Nations held, which discussed international issues, was two major studies aimed to understand the issue of human trafficking, particularly for women engaged in prostitution, and the demand for them. There are many change agents working to bring about change from on-campus to international organizations. To describe a few, the on-campus group All Walks Project is a working to end child trafficking and exploitation. They are helping to grow the movement to eradicate children trafficking by providing specialized and effective solutions designed to improve prevention, intervention, and survivors restoration strategies. Plus, we also have more organizations such as the McCain Institute, Polaris Project, World Hope International, who advocate and mobilize against this issue. The change goal of the anti-sex trafficking movement is to change both attitude and behavior. There is currently a negative view on survivors from sex trafficking and the women in particular, so anti-sex trafficking agents want to change this view. The main target population is would be Congress people who are at the state and federal levels to pass legislation. The people perpetuating this must be imprisoned and shown a different lifestyle, and general public must have a heightened sense of awareness to not be a bystander in the physical force of oppression. The strategy that is being used by the change agent to bring about the desired change is mostly facilitative. It is facilitative because the factors that will bring about the change are both within and outside the communities at large. We need the intelligence community to identify hotspots to locate the zones we could begin. We need government officials inside the system that advocate for this issue so that outside organizations can act on it. That is not only for the couple of communities, but for cities and countries around the world. The type of movement I would identify as anti-sex trafficking is revolutionary, as explained in our readings on the types of social movements. Revolutionary movements, on the other hand, seek to fundamentally change the overall system, often primarily on the political system. The anti-sex trafficking movement is seeking to terminate the system and aim at its roots. So when Senator Corker introduced legislation in 2015 via the National Defense Authorization Act, which passed in 2006, this was seen as a domestic effort. Internationally, trafficking had been defined by the United Nations and recognized as an act of violence against women at the Fourth World Conference in 1995. So a year before I was born. This is a major step in enforcing effective strategies nationally and internationally to eliminate sex trafficking around the world. The theory about the origins of social movements that best account for how the anti-sex trafficking began would be through the rational choice theory, as described in the readings, because they see this as a collection. However, this is also goes back to time where there were brothels became prostitution didn't become legalized. So it all is just through seeing how the world has come together, and it's seen through the United Nations, in the League of Nations, especially now in current days. So to summarize the effectiveness of the change strategy, it can be described so far as inconclusive. The changes ongoing and attempts have been made in countries in terms of raids ending sex trafficking in small areas around the world. However, this issue is on the international arena, and the sex traffickers versus the anti-sex trafficking movement will continue to battle it out. The beginning battles occurred when the United Nations announced to the world that this was a gender-based act of violence, and then further promoted to countries to take action when sex trafficking became a global lucrative industry that raked in billions of dollars annually. This is not only a problem in the United States, but around the world that has profited from modern-day slavery known as sex trafficking. It has been encounters like cities in Los Angeles, New York City, and even right here in Phoenix, Arizona. There has been little progress, however, the more programs pop up and show their efforts towards preventing and ultimately stopping this will be the biggest challenge, but also reward towards this world issue. And thank you.